as I was saying, so you have 6 topics. Choose one. Write a 2 to 3 page, 600 to 900 word, no more please, essay that's free from grammatical, spelling, mechanical errors, and it argues a strongly worded thesis. Include a works cited page, use parenthetical citation, or give you an example of what that ought to look like. That's for within the paper. You have to indicate which topic you are responding to, which is shown at the bottom of the page. Your essay must have a title. Tell me how many words are in the title or in the essay at the end of the essay before the works cited page. Okay? Typed essays due in the box in my office door, or in my office because I will be there the morning that it's due, or in my mail slot in the English department mailroom by 11 a.m. Tuesday, December 11th. Our final time, the time set aside for the final, is Tuesday, 8 to 10. Okay? So I'm giving you an extra hour. Don't email me your paper, okay? I won't accept it, first of all, unless I've given you permission ahead of time, which I am highly unlikely to do. I'm going to leave my office at 11:05. If it's not in my hands, you fail the course, okay? You reserve a 0 on it, F for the course, etc. Won't be back on campus before I report grades. That might be untrue. I might have a final on Thursday, but I don't remember if I do or not. Just drawing a blank. MLA guidelines, all that kind of stuff. And then the other part in bold, failure to include a title, failure to follow any of the directions, F, don't test me. So here's your 6 topics. And we'll kind of discuss a couple of these a little bit today in wrapping up Lear. But probably not too much because I don't want to give you too much ammo. Number 1, what are these plays? Just Hamlet and Lear. Okay? Nothing from previous. What do these plays say about human choices and consequences? If anything. Okay? Include at least 2 substantive quotations from each of the plays. Notice, at least means you can have more. But because the essays are fairly short, you don't want to have 10. Because then most of the essay is Shakespeare and very little from you. Substantive essays. What does that mean? That means substantive quotations. That means a quotation with meat in it. A quotation that has some substance to what you are arguing. That does not mean, and I've had to start throwing that word substantive in, because I've had students, not too much in upper division courses, but this has happened. I've had students count as a quotation, yes, no, single words. And I'm like, no, that doesn't cut it. So, substantive. I've had students think, well, how many words does that mean? I'm not going to give you you're all smart enough to determine what substantive should mean for your essay, okay? Because what might be substantive for Ben's essay might not be substantive for Rebecca's, okay? So, 2, discuss madness as it is presented in both plays, because it is clearly presented in both plays. Why does Shakespeare use the trope of madness? What is he saying about madness and the human condition, if anything? Okay? Again, include at least 2 substantive quotations from each play. 3, is there an overarching theme or unifying idea among these plays? Okay? Discuss and prove 2 substantive from each play. Okay? 4, argue for what you believe is the theme of one of these plays. So that allows you to kind of laser-like focus on just one of them. 4 substantive quotations from that play. Okay? Don't do any secondary research. Just focus on the plays themselves. Right? Number 5, and I don't define it, so it's up to you to define it as you want. Discuss Shakespeare's tragic vision of the human condition in the plays. What do these plays say about human life existence and our purpose? Again, 2 substantive quotations from each play. And then number 6, discuss the religious perspective, outlook, ideology. That doesn't mean, for example, in Hamlet talking about, oh, is it Protestant or is it Catholic? It means kind of the overarching, is there a religious perspective that permeates, okay, one or both of the plays. If you write about one play, at least 4 substantive quotations from that play. If you write about both plays, at least 2 from each of them, okay? And then the top of your first page should look like this. Please put your name where it says your name. I have to say that because I've actually had papers that say your name. Okay?
What's the 1?
That shouldn't be there. I thought I deleted that, but it apparently got pushed off the margin on my screen. Then opposite your name should be your last name and a page number. So for the first page, it's 1 for, then English Learning 135, my name, the date, and you're telling me the topic, okay? The topic that you say you're doing ought to match the title, okay? And a comment about titles. I've been going through your sonnet extra credit now, what had been exam, but I've turned into extra credit. Titles need to be both descriptive and clear. That is, your title's like a roadmap. It's telling your reader where you're going. You never want your reader to go, huh? When a reader reads a title, okay? Title should not be ambiguous at all. So, for example, look at the title I made up for here. As flies to wanton boys. It's a quotation from King Lear. Killing flies for sport in King Lear and Hamlet. Now, obviously, there is no killing flies for sport unless we want to extrapolate on flies, okay, in the body of the essay. But if you did, then that title would be, while descriptive, would still be a bit ambiguous. Killing humans for sport. That would be much better, okay? So make sure your title is explicit, okay? All right. Enough of that. If you have questions, email me. We left off and we finished Act 3, Scene 7 of Lear. So we go to Act 4, Scene 1. And we see Edgar come in as poor Tom. Let's see here. Yeah, we'll skip Edgar's opening speech. 3-7 ended with what happening? What was the major action in that scene? Gloucester getting his eyes put out, okay? And he gets put out, and a servant leads him away. And in 4-1, Gloucester is led to/towards Dover and is intercepted by Edgar, okay? He doesn't know it's Edgar for a couple of reasons. One, Edgar is still pretending to be old Tom, and why else? Obviously. He's blind, he can't see him. You'd think he'd recognize his son's voice, though. But Edgar's probably masking his voice a bit. So, Gloucester and the old man, page 1238, left-hand column, make their way, and Edgar sees them and says, "My father, poorly led, world, world, O world, but that thy strange mutations make us hate thee, life would not yield to age. Thy strange mutations. What's he getting at? What are the strange mutations that exist in the world? Ancient Greek philosopher, whose name is escaping me at the moment, said, all is in flux. Everything changes. Nothing is permanent. That's what Edgar's getting at. Okay? So, the old man leads Gloucester, and Gloucester says, in response to the old man's, you cannot see your way. I have no way, and therefore want no eyes. I stumbled when I saw. What's he mean, I have no way? Okay, nowhere to go? Keep going. You're almost there. Rebecca, you're like 90% of the way.
No purpose?
Bingo. No purpose. Nowhere to go. No destination. In other words, he thinks life is all what? Or his life? Pointless? Think of the term pointless without a destination and apply a word that we would describe to that. It's not necessarily over.
Just irrelevant?
No. Wandering. He's merely wandering. Okay? So, I stumbled when I saw. That is, I fell. When I thought I knew, when I thought I understood, then what? Boom. He fell. What might Shakespeare be saying? What kind of person does Gloucester come across as before he's blinded? Let's say in the opening scene. Confident. What's another word for confidence? Add a little steroids to it. Arrogant. He thought he knew it all. Right? But he didn't. What does arrogance lead to? The psalmist or proverb writer, what goeth before a fall? Pride. Full oft 'tis seen, our means secure us, and our mere defects prove our commodities. And you got a couple glosses there. Our prosperity makes us proudly overconfident, whereas the sheer afflictions we suffer prove beneficial. Oh, dear son Edgar. Why is he calling Edgar a dear son? Well, what happened while he was being blinded? Edgar wasn't the traitor. Edmund was. Okay? The food of thy abused father's wrath. Might I but live to see thee in my touch. Right? He can't see him with his eyes. Might I but live what? To feel your face. I'd say I had eyes again. Okay? Edgar. Oh, gods. Who is it can say, I am at the worst? What does Edgar mean? Who is it can say, what does I am at the worst really mean? This is the worst it can get. It can't get any worse than this. Edgar is saying, who can say that? If you're wise, nobody. Why? Because every time we say, we meaning humanity, or an individual, every time we say, this is the worst it can get, what happens? The floor falls beneath you. You fall yet again. Why? Fortune's wheel keeps turning. You think, here's the wheel, you think this is bad. I'll go to 4 o'clock and then 5 o'clock. I am worse than e'er I was. How is Edgar, hearing what Gloucester said, now worse than he was? I mean, Because 10 minutes before this, he had it pretty bad. He knew his brother hated him. He thinks his father hates him. Now he hears and realizes, no, Dad doesn't hate me after all. And yet, Dad is now blind and apparently what? Out of favor. The old man, 'tis poor mad Tom, Edgar, and worse I may be yet. The worst is not so long as we can say, this is the worst. And I think, and I could be entirely wrong here, I don't know, I have to double check on this. I don't know if Shakespeare knew Oedipus the King, but the very end of Oedipus the King, literally the last line, the chorus, anybody know, says what? Count no man happy till he is dead, free of pain at last. What did Edgar just say? The worst is not. That is, the worst isn't yet to come, as long as you can say, this is the worst. So the old man asked Edgar, where are you going? Gloucester, is it a beggar man? He says, yeah, madman too. He has some reason, else he could not beg. That is, well, he can't be totally crazy, or he wouldn't beg. In the last night's storm, I such a fellow saw, which made me think a man a worm. Connection to Hamlet, folks? My son came then into my mind, and yet my mind was then scarce friends with him. I have heard more since. Well, what has he heard more since? Edgar wasn't the one who was alien to his mind. That was actually Edmund. And then Gloucester gives us one of the most famous lines from all of Shakespeare's tragedies. As flies to wanton boys are we to the gods. What does he mean, wanton boys? Your gloss. Childishly cruel. So what did he mean? What do quote-unquote childishly cruel boys do to flies? Swat them, kill them. Okay, you're not a boy. You were. You guys aren't sick enough.
You tortured them.
Bingo.
It's like the
I mean, I'll be totally
Magnifying
honest.
glass.
Friends and I get a magnifying glass, catch a fly, catch a bee, put it in a jar. Get this, find the sun, magnifying glass, focus that, and burn the little buzzard. That's sick. Okay? That's what he means. As flies to wanton boys, what's the rest of the line? Are we to the gods? So what does that say about human life? We're playthings for what? Now, within the context of the play, okay, it's, some pagan pantheon, okay? Within the context of Shakespeare's day, however, what kind of perspective does that give us about, quote unquote, God, since not the gods? We're what? How about let's move forward, about 100 years, 105, 110 years, sinners in the hands of an angry God. Nice little sermon by Jonathan Edwards, American Puritan. I think early 18th century. I don't remember the exact date of the sermon. Where he describes God solely as angry. And he describes sinners, who includes what? Everyone. As hanging by a single thread over the fires of hell. Okay? We are like flies to wanton boys to the gods. We are nothing but playthings to the gods. Now, let's say the gods just means the universe. Then what is he saying? What's the purpose? What's the meaning of human existence? Suffering. Or there is none. And then he finishes. They kill us for their sport. Now, you can't read Greek mythology, Roman mythology, without saying, yeah, pretty much. That's pretty much true. I mean, look at Zeus. Look at Apollo with humanity. Okay? We're here for what purpose? Because they're bored. Okay? Edgar, how should this be? Why does Edgar ask this? What's he mean? Bad is the trade that I must play fool to sorrow and angering itself and others. How should this be? I think Edgar is essentially saying, like Ophelia says about Hamlet, oh, what a noble mind is here overthrown. That is, Gloucester didn't used to think like this. Or did he? His first speech with Edmund is all about what? Well, the things that are happening in the world, in the state, in the families is because of the gods, the movement of the planets. Okay? If you accept that Ptolemaic system, okay, which remember, Earth, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 spheres, and each of these spheres, and the movement of this sphere affects this one and affects all the way down, then what's left for those down here? How much will do we really have? None. That's why Gloucester says all of this is what's causing this discord. And Edmund says, what a bunch of nonsense. I'm a rotten SOB because I like to be a rotten SOB. Okay? So, Gloucester tells the old man, get thee gone. I'll have Crazy Tom lead me. Okay? So Gloucester asks, you know the way to Dover? He says, yes. Line 72. There is a cliff, the famous cliffs of Dover. There is a cliff whose high and bending head looks fearfully in the confined deep. Bring me to the very brim of it, and I'll repair the misery that thou dost bear with something rich about me. That is, I'll give you something that I have with me that is valuable. That'll be your payment. Okay? 4:2, what do we start to see revealed? It kind of began in the scene where Gloucester is blinded, but now it becomes much more clear, much more out in the open. What kind of relationship do Albany and Goneril have? They're husband and wife, by the way.
It's like a professional almost.
Okay. What else? Are they madly in love? No. Why not? We're going to find out, Act 5, what's Edmund been doing? Don't say Goneril and Regan, because it's not clear that he's been doing them, but it's clear that he wanted to. It's clear that he kind of secretly courted them, to use a very old term. It's much more clear that he was in cahoots with each of them separately, plotting against the other. So we have Lear divided from himself. We have Lear divided from his daughters, except for one. Even though he divides himself from her, she is never divided from Lear, Cordelia. Bear in mind, what's the root of her name? C-O-R-D. Cord. Yeah, but what kind of cord is it? We're familiar with it in modern English as C-A-R-D, as in cardiac. She's Lear's heart, okay? Metaphorically speaking. And then the daughters are divided from each other. So we see line 30, Albany says, "Oh, Goneril, you are not worth the dust which the rude wind blows in your face. Husband to wife. He's not going to get any tonight. I fear your disposition. That nature which contemns its origin cannot be bordered, certain in itself. That nature which condemns its origin." Well, what is the origin of Goneril's nature? Lear. "She that herself will sliver and disbranch from her material sap, perforce must wither and come to deadly use." If you cut yourself off from the source of your power, of your being, then you will wither. Goneril. "Wisdom and goodness to the vile seem vile." Wisdom and goodness to the rotten are going to seem what? Rotten. What did we hear Edmund say about Edgar? He's noble-minded. And because he's noble-minded, what does he think of other people? They will act nobly. He can't imagine somebody being deceitful, which is why it's so easy to trick him. Filths savor but themselves. What have you done? Tigers, not daughters, what have you performed? Notice, plural there. What are you and Regan up to? A father and a gracious aged man, whose reverence even the head-lugged bear would lick, most barbarous, most degenerate, have you madded. Notice Albany is saying here, is telling us why Lear has gone mad. What's the purpose? Let me rephrase that. What's the cause of Lear's madness? Goneril and Regan. Okay? Do we know that for a fact? No, we don't. All we hear at the beginning of the play, first words out of Lear, to know our darker purpose. Darker there means hidden. Did Goneril and Regan kind of put him up to it? When Lear tells Regan, "I gave you all," how does she reply? "Yeah, and you took your own time." "Could my good brother suffer you to do it?" Who's his good brother? It's a brother-in-law. Cornwall. "A man, a prince, by him so benefited, if that the heavens do not their visible spirits send quickly down to tame these vile offenses, it will come." Albany saying, you're going to pay for this. The gods will do what? They're going to requite your actions. Humanity must perforce prey on itself like monsters of the deep. Milk-livered man. Why does she call him milk-livered? What does she mean by that? You coward. You are a coward. You are a weak. Milk is colored how? It's white. Lily-livered. Okay? That bearest a cheek for blows, a head for wrongs, who hast not in thy brows an eye discerning thine honor from thy suffering, that not knows fools do those villains pity who are punished ere they have done their mischief. She says what? France is here. France has landed. We have to act. Okay? Thou change it, line 63, and self-covered thing, for shame be monster not thy feature. Were it my fitness to let these hands obey my blood, they are apt enough to dislocate and tear thy flesh and bones. That is, if I really wanted to do what I want to do, you'd be dead. However, thou art a fiend, a woman's shape doth shield thee. But because you're a woman, I'm not going to touch you. Ooh, marry your manhood. That's her way of saying what? Come on. Take your best shot. Okay? So, messenger comes in and says, "O my good lord, the Duke of Cornwall's dead, slain by his servant, going to put out the other eye of Gloucester." Remember, what did the servant do? When they put the one eye out of Gloucester, the servant, I can't stand by. I can't allow this to happen. And he stabs Cornwall. The servant is killed in the process. The servant dies how? What kind of death? Noble death, an honorable death. Why? He sacrifices himself. Okay? Albany. Gloucester. What? You did what? Yeah. The servant that he bred, thrilled with remorse, opposed against the act, bending his sword to his great master, who thereat enraged. Okay? So, this shows you are above, you justicers, that these our nether crimes, nether, that is, hidden crimes, those things we try to do in private, will what? So speedily can venge. What might Shakespeare be saying? I used the phrase the other day from Chaucer. Murder will out. Okay? Hamlet's to be or not to be speech. I'd have James stand up and Thomas stand up and recite it. Hamlet's to be not to be speech says, what stops Hamlet and others from suicide? Conscience, fear. Lost he his other eye? Talking about Gloucester? Yep, both. Okay. So, the messenger gives Goneril a letter. She reads it. She says, I like this well, but being widow and my Gloucester with her, she goes, she's thinking Edmund's mine. Albany, line 95, end of that scene. Gloucester, I live to thank thee for the love thou showedst the king, and to revenge thine eyes. He's not saying, Gloucester, I live to thank you because you will revenge, the king. He says, I live to thank you for the love you've shown the king, and I live to do what? To get vengeance for your eyes. Come hither, friend, tell me more that thou knowest. 4:3. Actually, we're going to skip 4:3. 4:4. Cordelia comes in. And she tells us about Lear. Mad as the vexed sea. Singing aloud, crowned with rank fumitor, blah, 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 blah. Okay? And so she asks a gentleman who appears to be some kind of healer, is there any way to bring him back? And he says there is. Our foster nurse of nature is repose. What's he mean? Sleep. Sleep helps cure illness, the which he lacks. Or repose can also just be rest, calm, peacefulness. That to provoke in him are many simples operative. Simples are medicinal herbs. That is, I'm going to provoke some sleep in him. I'm going to give him some, THC or some CBD oil. It's going to just relax him and put on some nice Japanese music and he'll lull off to sleep. Okay? Messenger comes in. British powers are marching, etc., etc. 4:5 we're going to skip. 4:6 we'll pick up with. Gloucester and Edgar as Tom are continuing walking. And Gloucester's like, when shall I come to the top of that same hill? What's he mean? This is like a little kid in the back of the car on family vacation. Are we there yet? Why is Gloucester in such a hurry? Is it that he's wanting to know where he is? He wants to get it over with. Because what does he tell Tom? Did he tell him why he's going to that hill? No, but he says, once you lead me there, I won't need you to lead me anymore. Okay? So Tom says, well, you're climbing it right now. Methinks the ground is horribly steep. Okay? Do you hear the sea? No. Well, then, you must not be hearing well. Okay? So, Gloucester says, take me to the edge. Edgar, give me your hand. You're now within a foot, line 25, of the extreme verge. I love how the BBC version does this. For all beneath the moon would I not leap upright. Let go of my hand here, friend. He gives him a purse. Fairies and gods, prosper it with thee. Go on, go. Let me hear you going. Tom. Now fare you well, sir. And he kind of, makes it sound like he's walking farther and farther away. And Edgar tells the audience why I do trifle thus with his despair. Trifle. What's he mean? Observe, suffer, play with. A trifle is kind of an insignificant thing. It's something you might play with. Okay? So why I do play with his despair is for what purpose? To cure it. He wants to cure his despair. What does despair literally mean? It comes from Latin, despace, or de Esperanto. Esperanto, faith or hope. It's hope, really, not faith. Despace means out of hope. No hope whatsoever. You look down that tunnel of life, and what do you see? Just darkness. As flies to wanton boys. They kill us for their sport. That's hopeless. Okay? Gloucester. So Edgar says that, and then we see Gloucester kneel. O you mighty gods, this world I do renounce, and in your sights shake patiently my great affliction off. What does he mean, shake my great affliction off? To use a line from Hamlet's to be or not to be speech, slough off this mortal coil. What's the mortal coil? Flesh. Slough off like a snake shedding its skin. And yet he says, before shaking, or in between shaking my great affliction off, he adds an adverb, telling us how he's doing the shaking. Patiently. What does to be patient mean? Imagine you have a 5-year-old. Imagine you have a 3-year-old, a 5-year-old, and a 7-year-old. And it's a week and a half later than now. Christmas tree is up, loaded with presents underneath, and you tell those kids what? Wait. Don't touch. I used to tell my kids, everyone you touch, we take back. Dad, it's like, ow, it's like electrifying them, kind of a thing. Okay? Is he patiently enduring? No. What's he want to do? End it all. So, you mighty gods, this world I do renounce. If I could bear it longer and not fall to quarrel with your great opposeless wills, my snuff and loathed part of nature should burn itself out. If I could bear it longer. Notice, that's not the import. or that's not the most important part. What is? What comes next? And not fall to quarrel with your great opposeless wills. The gods cannot be opposed. That's what Oedipus learns. And it's not only the gods, it's what is kind of behind the gods. Fate. So, if I could bear it longer, life, and not fall to quarrel. What's he mean? If you live in this world, you will what? You will quarrel with your fate. If you take that idea of fate. Why? Because fate says what? Is there any notion of fairness with fate? Nope. Fate is simply what is. When I teach my Brit 1 3010 course, and we talk about Beowulf or Old English poetry, we bring up the concept, the Anglo-Saxon idea of weird. Okay? And weird is from which we get the word weird. Okay? And the best translation for that word is not the Greek fate. I think it's what will be, will be. You can't change it. Does that mean everything? I have no choice? Does that mean I was fated to pull out this coat and this shirt this morning? According to some people, yes. Everything that exists in the world was determined 14.5 billion years ago when, boom, the Big Bang occurred. All right? He says, if I could bear it longer and not fall, my snuff and loathed part of nature should burn itself out. That is, my flesh would what? Gradually wear out. Are we told how old Gloucester is? No, but he's not as old as Lear. In other words, Gloucester should have a few more years. If Edgar live, oh, bless him. He's asking the gods to bless Edgar, and yet what did he say the last time we saw him on the stage? About the gods. They are like cruel, wanton boys. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Why? Why would he not be intellectually consistent? Because life sucks. And there is no intellectual consistency to it. That is, things don't make sense. It just is. Now, that's a pretty bleak perspective. And that's why he's like, all right, farewell. And he falls. Gone, sir, farewell. The treasury of life when life itself yields to the theft. Had he been where he thought, well, he'd be dead. And he goes, oh, what are you, sir? Notice, he doesn't say, how are you? Why? Because Edgar is going to continue the fiction that I led you to the cliff, and how did you not die? Let me. Hadst thou been aught but gossamer, feathers, air, so many fathoms down, precipitating, thou'd shivered like an egg, but thou dost breathe. Hast heavy substance, bleedst not, speakst, art sound. 10 masts at each make not the altitude which thou hast perpendicularly fell. Thy life's a miracle. Now, Edgar means the fact that you fell that distance, 10 times 10 masts. And that's like 40 or 50 feet. So you fell 400, 500 feet and you're still alive. That's a miracle. But I think Edgar / Shakespeare means you're a miracle. The very fact that you exist. Ben?
When Edgar says, when he talks about where he thought he had been, where he thought by this had thought been passed, is that him telling, like, at this point, does the audience understand that Edgar's Lear, or are they under the impression that
yeah, the audience,
kill himself, or they're in on it?
The audience is aware because of how Edgar has spoken to us. Okay, that he's led Gloucester to believe he's going to take a dive over the cliff. Okay, and if you're familiar with two things, one, famous movie 1946 gets played this time of year around just about nonstop around the clock. It's a Wonderful Life by Frank Capra. Okay, about a character who thinks, my life is crap. It's meaningless. I wish I never. And then Stanley the Angel shows him. Clarence the Angel shows him. This is what the world would be like if you had never existed. And he realizes it's a rather dark place. Okay? But there's another example from much, much, much more current literature, the Harry Potter stories. Book 7 in the Harry Potter novels. When Harry goes off to Godric's Hollow, we don't have time for this, but when Harry goes off to Godric's Hollow with Hermione to discover his past, and they find his parents' graves and stuff, and he goes to Bathilda Bagshot's house, but it's not really Bathilda Bagshot, and his wand is broken. Harry thinks that's the one thing that protects me from Voldemort. And he hits the proverbial bottom. It is the worst. The very next day, he wakes up, and our narrator tells us, gives us a visual image of Harry is sitting outside the tent he and Hermione are kind of living in, and he's looking out over this beautiful landscape. It's like a Thomas Kinkade painting, mountains and forests, and down below you hear what? You start to hear the church bells. It's almost like the Grinch up on top of Mount Crumpet, looking down on Whoville as the clock strikes midnight, it's Christmas morning. And Harry thinks he is nothing to the universe. I mean, the description is something like his pain, life, existence meant nothing to the world. And the narrator then says, not being aware of the miracle that was his life. Okay? That's the point Edgar is getting at. But, Gloucester, have I fallen or no? Edgar made it pretty clear. 10, yeah. Look up. I don't have any eyes. Is wretchedness deprived that benefit to end itself by death? Is wretchedness deprived the benefit? Notice he doesn't say right to end itself by death. 'Twas yet some comfort when misery could beguile the tyrant's rage and frustrate his proud will. Well, Shakespeare had already written Julius Caesar. Wait. Yes, he hadn't written Antony and Cleopatra. Because Antony and Cleopatra, one of the tragedies that's written after this, we see both Antony and Cleopatra kill themselves. Why? To frustrate the tyrant's rage. Who's the tyrant? Caesar. Who wants to capture them both and essentially march them through the streets of Rome. Who's the tyrant that Gloucester wants to frustrate? The gods. Oh yeah, well you can't kill me because I'm going to kill myself first. Okay? So, Edgar helps Gloucester up. and says, "'Tis above all strangeness. Upon the crown of the cliff, what thing was that which parted from you? That is, I saw something leave you, poor unfortunate beggar." That was Edgar, right? So Edgar's saying that he now is not the same person that to Gloucester, he's implying. I'm not the same person that led you to the cliff. I was somebody who was where? Down at the bottom of the cliff. And I saw you fall. Methought his eyes were 2 full moons. He had 1,000 noses. Horns whelped and waved. A demon. A devil. The foul flibbertigibbet, as was referred to earlier. Gloucester, I remember now. Henceforth, from this moment on, I'll bear affliction till it do cry out itself, enough, enough, and die. I'll bear affliction means what? I will patiently endure until, what's the it do cry out itself? Until the affliction, the pain, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune say, that's enough. Because what does that mean? Death. He's had enough. See, Oedipus, the reason Oedipus is so important, Oedipus, we're told, is the person who suffers the most. And if you read all 3 plays in the Oedipus cycle, what happens to Oedipus? He is turned into a god in Oedipus at Colonus. Why? Because he suffered more than any other person ever. As if suffering makes one godlike. Because the Greek and Roman gods, they don't suffer. Or if they do, then we suffer.
But isn't that wheel of fate? Like when you reach the bottom and you're headed out?
Yes, it is. But not the wheel of fate. Wheel of fortune. See, fortune is the power that rules here. Fate is way out there. Fate, if you were to extrapolate the Greek pagan system and kind of superimpose it with this Ptolemaic idea, fate's out here. The gods are out here. Fate doesn't determine what the gods do. The gods don't determine what fate does. The gods can see what fate has in store. It's like the gods read the book. And they jump to the ending. And then what do? Ben, come here. Let me tell you how it ends for you. Okay? Your mom. You and your mom are going to have a thing. It's like, whoa, buddy, All right? That thing you speak of, I took it for a man. 'Twould say, the fiend. Bear free and patient thoughts. Free and patient. How do you bear free thoughts? Free how? If something is free, it's what? Without cost? What else? Unburdened. Unconstrained, right? There's no limits about it. Okay? So that bear those kind of thoughts, unburdened, unconstrained, without cost, and patient. That is, accepting misfortune. Has Edgar just done what he told us in an aside he was going to do? Cured Gloucester of his despair? Despair is no hope. Has he given him hope? Has he replaced no hope with something to hope in? What was it I was talking about? In my intro to Lit course yesterday, Matthew Arnold, in Dover Beach. Have any of you read that? Dover Beach. Depressing as all hell poem. Okay? Because it's about what is left when, according to a part of the poem, one of the stanzas in the poem, when the sea of faith that once encircled the world withdraws. The sea of faith simply means any and all religious beliefs. Okay? Well, what replaces that? In Arnold's poem, nothing. Nothing. Because he finishes that stanza and talks about the long melancholy roar of the sea of faith withdrawing on the shingles of the world, that is the shore of the ocean. And then the speaker addresses the girl that he's with. Ah, love, let us be true to one another. For this world, he says, which seems like a dream. Notice, seems and like. They both imply what? The world is not a dream. It seems like a dream. It seems wonderful, it seems pleasant, etc. He says, hath not, this world hath not joy, nor love, nor light, nor certitude, nor peace, nor help from pain. Each of those 6 things are things that the quote-unquote sea of faith provides. Again, whether you're talking Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, they what? They say there is a purpose, there is a meaning to all of this. And you remove all of that, and what are you left with? Nothing. Nothing. Okay? Fear-free and patient thoughts. Gloucester, he doesn't get his despair necessarily totally annihilated or replaced. So, Edgar, who comes here? And it's the king. I am the king himself. Skip a bit. Gloucester speaks to Lear. The trick of that voice, line 106, I do well remember. Is it not the king? Aye, every inch a king. When I do stare, see how the subject quakes. I pardon that man's life. What was the cause? Notice, pardon that man's life. He was going to be hanged or executed. What was the cause? Adultery. No, you're not going to die for adultery. Why? The wren goes to it. The wren is not monogamous, in other words. And the small gilded fly does let you in my sight. Let copulation thrive. For Gloucester's bastard son was kinder to his father, Lear hasn't been brought up to date, than my daughters got tween the lawful sheets. Therefore, I threw that in, to it, luxury pell-mell. For I lack soldiers beyond yon simpering dame. Who's the yon simpering dame? Cordelia. Her forks presages snow that midst virtue, blah, 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 blah. Gloucester, let me kiss that hand. Line 132. Lear, let me wipe it first. It smells of mortality. Why does he say it smells of mortality? It's foreshadowing. Lear's not going to be around much longer. Why does Gloucester want to kiss it? What does Kent say when Lear says, why would you serve me? There's a hint about you of authority. O ruined piece of nature, Gloucester replies, this great world shall so wear out to naught. What does he mean? This whole world is what? Mortal. it will die. Dost thou know me? I remember your eyes. He gives Gloucester, read it. I can't read it. He finally makes Lear see. I'm blind. I can't see. Lear, oh, no eyes in your head, nor no money in your purse. Your eyes are in a heavy case, your purse in a light. Yet you see how this world goes. That is, you don't have to see in order to perceive how this world goes. Gloucester, I see it feelingly. I feel it in my bones. And what is it? As flies to wanton boys are we to the gods. But he's going to feel it how? Until he dies. That is, he's come to accept it. What, art mad? A man may see how this world goes with no eyes. Look with thine ears. See how yon justice rails upon yon simple thief. Hark in thine ear, change places and handy-dandy. Which is the justice, which is the thief? Why is Shakespeare bringing this up? What is the source of justice? Ultimately, in a monarchy as Shakespeare lived in. Not like the English monarchy today. It wasn't Parliament. It's the monarch. What did Lear say just before he went into the hovel? Remember, he thinks about the poor beggars who are out in the storm and says what? I didn't give any thought to these when I should have. So he says, take physic pomp. That is, I need to suffer from this storm. Why? This storm will be restorative to me. How? It reduces my arrogant, self-assured sense of self. It reduces them to what? Being like the beggar. As Hamlet puts it, all men and women are what? The same. Your emperor, your beggar, they're both what? Food for worms. That's it. All right? So, the king goes on talking about injustices in the world. Okay, Gloucester placed all the blame on what? The gods. Lear is talking what? He's not talking about the gods. He's talking about so-called, protocols of civilization. Thou rascal beetle, hold thy bloody hand. Who's the beetle? Your gloss tells you, like an archdeacon who calls people to church for certain offenses. Hold thy bloody hand. Why dost thou lash that whore? Strip thine own back. Thou hotly lust to use her in that kind. That is, don't go beating the prostitute for being a prostitute when, in your mind, you wish you were one of those using the prostitute. Hypocrisy, anybody? What's Christ say? He that sees a woman and lusts after her, it's just as bad as doing the deed. So, the usurer hangs the cozener. Through tattered clothes, small vices do appear. Robes and furred gowns hide all. Heard somebody the other day talking about, if you have money, what? You can buy justice. The rich get off, while you and I, one of Obama's Secretary of Treasury, Tim Geithner, before he was even approved by the Senate knew he had like $500,000 in back taxes. If I owed $500,000 in back taxes, I would not be here ever for the rest of my life. I would be locked up until I paid it off. Okay? Why? No furred robe and gown. What else? He says, plate sin with gold and the strong lance of justice skirtless breaks. Cover it up with gold, and justice is ineffectual. Edgar, matter and impertinency mixed, reason in madness. That is, Lear is mad, yes. I mean, he is over the moon, crazy. And yet, like Hamlet, there's method to the madness. Did it take Lear's madness, like Gloucester's blindness, for Lear to finally see? If thou wilt weep my fortunes, take my eyes. I know thee well enough, thy name is Gloucester. Thou must be patient. Why? We came crying hither. What does he mean, hither? Does he mean here to this place? Dover? No. Hither means this world. Thou knowest, the first time we smell the air, we wail and cry. That is, as soon as you're born, you're going to open your eyes and go, hell no! You know, I always tell my students, that very first breath, what happens? The counter starts ticking downward. That's when you start to die. That's when it starts moving backwards. People say I'm morbid. Lear, when we are born, we cry that we are come to this great stage of fools. Okay? And so a gentleman with some attendants come in, and they're like, shh, calm down. We're going to help you. So they take Lear off, and Gloucester then replies. Okay, remember, Edgar said, I'm going to cure him of his despair. But he doesn't really. What he does do is he gets him to not be despairing, but he hasn't replaced it with anything. Gloucester sees Lear, and then we hear line 219. You ever gentle gods, no longer as flies to wanton boys are we to the gods, they sport with us. You ever gentle gods, take my breath from me, let not my worser spirit tempt me again to die before you please. So what does that mean? All you ever blessed gods, all is in your hands. Let me die when you think I should die. It's all in your great opposeless will, okay, as Lear put it earlier. So, skip a bit, go on to 4:7. We only have 14 minutes left. No, 19 minutes left. And we find out Lear's asleep. Okay? He's had new clothes put on him. Line 22. Line 21. Cordelia asks, is he arrayed? That is he dressed? Aye, madam. 22. In the heaviness of sleep, we put fresh garments on him. Be by, good madam, when we do awake him. I doubt not of his temperance. That is, I'm not sure what he's going to be like when he wakes up. Okay? Why do they put fresh garments on him? Okay. Why else? Well, I mean, at one point, some versions of the play, some film versions and play versions, Lear strips naked when he's out in the storm. So he's running around on stage stark naked, okay, in some versions. In others, he's got barely anything on, okay? But when he meets up with Gloucester, he's got essentially rags on. So, I mean, one obvious reason is, well, you don't want him walking around in rags, and they're soaked, so that's one obvious reason. What are some other possible reasons? Could be, in which case his clothes become what? His burial clothes. Now, in the Renaissance tradition, in our tradition, if somebody dies, if they have a funeral, they're not being cremated and stuff. How do you dress a person when they go into the coffin? They look very nice. If it's a man in a suit, et cetera, et cetera. Not in Shakespeare's day. What are they buried in? A shroud. What color is the shroud? White. Why? It represents the baptismal garment. That is, when one was baptized, they'd be baptized and then be dressed in a white garment. Why a white garment? Because of the book of Revelation that talks about putting on a white robe. For what? For those who overcome. Overcome what? The tribulations of this world. What has Lear done? He's overcome the tribulations. What tribulations? Bitchy daughters, sons-in-law, or at least one of them, against him, plots and machinations, and insanity. Okay? Those are some pretty severe tribulations to overcome. Does he overcome them in the sense that when Lear wakes up, he's totally, perfectly in his right mind? No. Because what else is this an image of? He goes to sleep dressed in rags. He wakes up dressed in white. It's reborn. It's a baptismal image. The old Lear kind of dies. The new Lear kind of wakes up. And what do we see? Cordelia kisses him. Oh, my dear father, restoration, hang thy medicine on my lips. Let this kiss repair those violent harms. And Lear wakes up. You do me wrong to take me out of the grave. That is, I was dead, and you brought me back. Thou art a soul in bliss. Well, if he was in the grave and he saw a soul in bliss, he didn't go to the other place. But I am bound upon a wheel of fire. Purgatory? That mine own tears do scald like molten lead. Notice, his tears do what?
Scald.
They scald. Tears are made of what? Water. What's the scalding, the hot water, doing while he's on the wheel, the metaphorical wheel of fire? They're purifying. He's being washed with his tears. Okay? And she's like, okay. Do you know me? You are a spirit. Where did you die? She's like, okay, he's scarce awake. Where have I been? Where am I? I am mightily abused. I should even die with pity to see another thus. Cordelia kneels. Look upon me. Hold your hands in benediction. Lear, don't mock me. I'm a very foolish, fond old man. Remember, one of the first things Goneril says at the opening, after Lear divides the kingdom, kicks Cordelia out, and then leaves. He hath but ever slenderly known himself. That is, he's not a very meditative person. He doesn't take to self-reflection. This, Lear knows himself. This is like Lear's confession. Man, I've been a damn fool. 80 and upward, not an hour more nor less. What does he mean? I have been a very foolish, fond old man. For how long? For all my life. What did the fool tell him? You should have been wise before you were old. Now you're not wise and you're old. I fear I am not in my perfect mind. I should know you, and I should know this man, but I'm doubtful. I am mainly ignorant what place this is, and all the skill I have. How did I get dressed in these? Are you Cordelia? Yes. Be your tears wet? Why is that important? If they're wet, then they're what? They're real. This is like Lear pinching himself. They're wet. I'm not dreaming. I pray weep not. If you have poison for me, you've got reason to kill me, honey. I did you wrong. No cause. No. What does she, when Lear says, here, I know you do not love me, for your sisters have, as I do remember, done me wrong. You have some cause, they have not. That is, you have cause not to love me. No cause, no cause. What is she also saying? What does she also mean by that? All that's what? It's all past. That's all done. How? Why? Because you're newly awakened. You're newly dressed. Okay? Am I in France? Nope. You're at home. You're in your own kingdom. Don't lie to me. Do not abuse me. Okay? The gentleman says, be comforted, good madam. The great rage you see is killed in him. It is danger to make him even over the time he is lost. Another indication to me that, even though Shakespeare didn't know it, this is Alzheimer's. Because the number one thing you do not do with somebody who has Alzheimer's is argue with them. If they say, I'm packing and getting ready to go somewhere, you don't say, as I did with my mom a few times, Mom, you're not going to L.A. Grandma doesn't live there anymore. She's dead. You just say, okay, we'll go home, we'll get everything packed. You go along with the fiction. Why? Because 5 minutes later, whoosh, it's gone. That's why the gentleman says, don't overtax them. Because if you argue with somebody, quote unquote, like this, what does it do? It fires up that defense mechanism. Okay? Act 5. We're going to skip a bunch. We see Edmund, Albany, Goneril, Regan, and all the others leave, and we get Edmund, and we hear Edmund say, line 58, to both these sisters I have sworn my love. Each jealous of the other as the stung are of the adder. Which shall I take? Both? One? Neither? Neither can be enjoyed if both remain alive. To take the widow, Goneril, because her husband's dead. Okay? Excuse me, Regan, because her husband's dead. Exasperates, makes mad her sister Goneril, and hardly shall I carry at my side her husband being alive. So, I'll have to do something about Albany. 5-2, we can skip. 5-3, let's see. Edmund comes in. Lear and Cordelia have been captured. And Cordelia says, shall we see our sisters, your daughters? No, no. Come, let's away to prison. We two alone will sing like birds in the cage. Why? They'll be in prison. And yet, in Milton's Paradise Lost, Satan says, the mind can make a heaven of hell, a hell of heaven. Meaning, Lear is saying, if you and I are together in a prison cell, then that cell for us is all the world. It's all we need. Lear will count himself in bliss. Okay? He says we'll talk with them. Who loses, who wins, who's in, who's out. And we'll take upon us, line 16, the mystery of things as if we were God's spies. Notice, I think this is a slip on Shakespeare's part. It's not as if we were the God's spies. This is a little bit of the Renaissance Christianity, if you want, slipping in. Maybe it's not a mistake. Maybe it's intentional. And we'll wear out in a walled prison packs and sects of great ones that ebb and flow by the moon. That is, and we'll die while all this stuff goes on around us. Okay? Skip a lot. Go to about 84. Albany attempts to arrest Edmund on capital treason. Charges him with treason. Points to Goneril, says some things. And throws down his glove. And says, if anybody can prove, if anybody will take up this challenge, Edmund, defend yourself. Okay? And who shows up to prove Edmund is a traitor? And how does he show up? And in disguise. He has a helm on. Okay? So he fights Edgar. And what happens? Edmund, sorry. Edgar says, line 136, swears by his, oath and such, thou art a traitor, false to thy gods, thy brother, thy father, conspiring against this high illustrious prince, that is Albany. And from the extremest upward of thy head to the descent and lust dust below thy foot, a most toad-spotted traitor. He's just called him the lowest of the low. And Edmund's like, who the hell are you to say such things? Oh, I'll tell you later. So they fight, and Edmund is killed, but he doesn't die quickly. Okay? And Edmund says, yep, you're right, did it all. What you have charged me with, that have I done. Tell me who you are. If you're noble, I do forgive thee. And he's like, surprise. Elder brother, I am noble, right? Why? One, he's legitimate. How else is he noble? Everything Edgar does is for two purposes. To defend Gloucester and to defend the king. Okay? Edmund, thou hast spoken right, line 176. 'Tis true, the wheel is come full circle. Edmund started here. How? As a bastard. He rose. He hath made love to both sisters. He was almost in total control, and then he fell again. Okay? So, Edgar tells everybody, 185 and following, how and what he did, acting as a madman, etc., etc. Let's see here. We're going to skip a bunch again. Kent comes in. Albany says, produce the bodies. Why? What did Goneril do to Regan? Poison her. What happened to Goneril? She is stabbed or commits suicide. Edmund's still alive. He hasn't died yet. And Edmund says, send for Lear and Cordelia. Page 1253 at the top. 250 or so. For my writ is on the life of Lear and on Cordelia. Okay? Lear comes in with Cordelia in his arms. Howl, howl, howl. You are men of stones. Had I your tongues? Okay. Kent, is this the promised end? Promised end. That's not a pagan idea. It's a Christian idea. End of what? Is this the end of the world? Is Jesus about ready to come and make it all make sense? Okay? Edgar, or image of that horror. A presaging, a foreshadowing of that. Okay? So, Lear is back to what? He's crazy. Okay? He thinks maybe Cordelia yet lives, but she doesn't. And Lear dies. And 3:11, Lear. And my poor fool is hanged. No, no, no life. 3:11, Cordelia. Fool here is a term of endearment. Okay? I still think that it's possible he's talking about the other fool too. Okay? Why should a dog, a horse, a rat have life, and thou no breath at all? Thou'lt come no more, never, 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 never. Pray you, undo this button. And he's talking about the top button on his clothing. It could be metaphorical too. He might also be saying, undo the button that keeps me alive. Let the air out of the balloon, so to speak. Thank you, sir. Look, her lips. Look, there. And he dies. He dies with what? Look at those last words. Look at her lips. Look there. He's thinking what? She's alive. Dies with a modicum of hope. Okay? Edgar, look up, my lord. He's talking to Kent. Kent, no, vex not his ghost. Why? It was thought in Middle Ages, early Renaissance, that if you were present at someone's death, at the very moment of your death, you might be able to see their soul leave the body. And he said, no, vex not his ghost. Let it go. On him, let him pass. He hates him that would upon the rack of this tough world stretch him out longer. Okay? Kent, the wonder is he hath endured so long, he but usurped his life. Kent says, I have a journey, sir, shortly to go. My master calls me. I must not say so. Sir Lawrence Olivier had that put as his epitaph on his gravestone. What does Kent mean?
He's going to kill himself.
He's going to follow. Like Horatio says he wants to do. Edgar, the weight of this sad time we must obey. Meaning, endure. Speak what we feel, not what we ought to say. Okay, these are the last words. These are the words that stay with you when you leave the theater. Speak what we feel, not what we ought to say. The oldest hath borne most. We that are young shall never see so much, nor live so long. All right, won't say anything else. You've got this. Just follow the directions. And when you come to turn in your papers, assuming you turn it in when I'm in there, hopefully I will have your papers to give back to you. Oh, reminder,